So, hey everybody, for those of you guys who dropped by at 7 to witness a tech meltdown, we apologize, but thank you for enduring it and being part of our concept piece, uh, which is a commentary on our current Zoom reality. But my name is Dan. I'm, on behalf of New Focus Recordings, excited to announce the release of Hypercube's debut album, Brain on Fire. Came out today. And joined here with Erin Rogers, saxophones and composition, Jay Sorce on guitar, Andrea Lodge on keyboards, piano and accordion, and Chris Graham on percussion. And we're gonna chat, and I'm gonna try to get out of the way and let these guys talk about this awesome album. But before we go, just want to say Bandcamp is waiving their fee today, and so is New Focus. So if you are intrigued by this album, which I'm sure you will be, roll over to Bandcamp and pick up a copy. And all the money goes right to these guys. So it's a great album, guys. Very excited to be putting this out, and thought maybe we could talk a little bit about how you guys pick rep, how you commission composers, how you select composers to work with, and the evolution of that over the course of the growth of the group. I feel like you have a really great, tightly curated set of pieces, especially on this record, and that's really admirable. So aesthetic.
Yeah, I think the reason why we were able to make it so focused is because we have been working together as a group for almost 6 years now, and we commissioned a lot of pieces, and we were lucky to work with a lot of composers, and we were able to decide on an album that had a similar aesthetic throughout the pieces, and that only comes through working together for a while and having a lot of repertoire that has been written for us or that we have played through the years. So we chose pieces that were more unique to our ensemble, meaning most pieces, 4 out of the 5 were written especially for us, and 1 was revised for us.
Yeah.
So it sort of makes it more personal that way, and I don't know if one of you guys want to build on that.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing, we had some pieces that were pre-existing that we played early on. There's Louis Andriesen's Hout and Pirel's Localized Corrosion. Those pieces sort of got us together as a group in this formation, and the idea was always that we would commission our own works at our own sort of catalog. And one of the nice things about that is that it's still a relatively new ensemble. The instruments are sort of relatively new if you think of instruments, and Chris talks about this often, where I mean, like saxophone was invented in 1840. There's not like a ton of rep for all, the sax percussion that dates way back. So it's a kind of a fresh palette for a lot of composers, and we could also have Andrea plays accordion, and 2 of the pieces in this album feature her on accordion. So that adds another unique flavor to this ensemble.
Yeah, totally. That's something I really love. The integration of accordion creates a whole different sound world. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a really expressive instrument.
Yeah, totally. And you play it beautifully.
Oh,
do you guys want to play some music? You want to play some of Dennis's piece or one of the ones?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm up for that. Totally.
Let's do it.
So this is a short excerpt from Under Nails, which is by Dennis Sullivan, and we're going to play a little bit of the piece, and then we can talk about what you're hearing after.
Love it.
We love it too.
Let's just keep listening to it.
It's so much fun. That piece is so much fun to play. There's just so many elements. There's so much like unconventional playing in that piece, and it's all specifically notated, and it's very like musically laid out, and it has a beautiful form to it and a sense of movement through the different sections of the piece. So it's just it was an amazing piece to discover and sort of figure out with Dennis's help, of course.
Yeah. You know, knowing or having heard Obama a bunch of times, it was cool for me to listen to your piece, Aaron, and Dennis's piece for Hypercube, and sort of compare and contrast a little bit. Like I heard some elements of the way you guys write for the duo, but then obviously the instrumentation shapes it in a different direction. So I'm curious, like how it feels for you to the differences there.
Yeah. I mean, the forces are just larger when you double the number of people. So, I mean, one thing you can hear in Dennis's recording there is that there's so many sounds, and one of the fun things about this recording was really mixing it and playing with the panning and sort of the spatial elements of that. You almost have like a three-dimensional, I mean, I'm on headphones hearing this, but it sounds like every sound is coming from a different direction. And that's because, you know, we've got Chris playing percussion over here, but also playing percussion that's attached to the piano. Jay and I are playing percussion that's inside the piano, as well as our instruments, our respective instruments. Andrea's playing the keys, the keyboard, but also inside the piano for a lot of it. So you've got sort of 8 different angles of sound in Under Nails, Dennis's piece, which is titled for the idea that the strings in the piano are under nails, and there's a lot of sort of kind of grindy sounds like that. The sonic exploration is similar to a lot of the sort of Pope Bomber writing, where we experiment a lot with instrument sounds in conventional ways of playing them, and then incorporate that into the writing. My piece, we'll hear in a little while, is I would say I wanted to play with the large forces of this ensemble, just because we have the ability to plug in to make everything larger, and so it just brings everything up. So that'd be the difference maybe between my writing here and Obama.
Should we listen to your piece now, actually, since we were talking about it and we sort of have it on our mind?
So this is called Casino Remix, and take a listen and then we'll talk a little bit about it. How'd this happen? So that's the opening of Casino Remix. It's probably of all the tracks on here, maybe one of the noisier ones. Sort of compares, I guess, to Sam Pluta's piece in that way, where there's a lot of noise in the piece. It begins and ends with those large sections. So we've got Andrea on keyboard synth playing just patches from an Access Virus TI, which is a synth that I've been working with for a while. I'm on soprano sax, and in a live setting this is not amplified, so percussion and saxophone aren't amplified. We've got electric guitar, of course, and then there's a backing track or sample that plays in the background that creates sort of this sort of overwhelming noise, which, of course, if you've ever been in a casino, is the feel. The piece moves through various sections, and I thought this would be one to show here just because of the contrast to some of the other smaller sound pieces.
I mean, when I was thinking about, by the way, for those of you folks who don't know Obama, it's Aaron's duo with Dennis Sullivan, percussion and sax, but also like a lot of samples and vocalizations and stuff. A really fantastic project. When I was sort of thinking about Obama, listening to your guys' pieces, I guess it was the samples that sort of stuck out to me. Like, but I think maybe you do that even more actively in the duo than in the quartet context. Is that
Yeah.
Fair to say, you think, or?
Yeah, and again, it has to do with creating.
You've got more forces. Yeah, totally.
And also there's an excitement to adding triggers, and I find that to be like visually exciting to watch performers also play a sampler. Even though obviously it's not a traditional instrument, but to be able to create a very intricate sample part where you've got someone essentially dancing on a footpad or playing a keyboard full of samples is it's something that requires a little bit of a learning curve too. So with Pope Bama we do a lot of that, and we try to mix it up. I think it just comes naturally.
Yeah, totally. Have you guys done much electroacoustic music where it's like a longer track that you have to sort of integrate with in terms of timings, or you've done more stuff that's sort of shorter samples that just is really just a trigger?
We've been mostly working with short samples included in, Aaron's piece and Dennis's piece as well, and some other pieces that we've done. We've worked with triggering them ourselves. We've never played with fixed audio. I don't think we've ever played with fixed audio, have we?
I think there was one time, but it was with the guest violinist in Canada. So I don't remember actually, but yeah, it's not really.
There was no live. That was a track. We played Sky McClay's piece. It had a click track, but no live digital.
That's right. Okay, I couldn't remember exactly. Yeah.
No, we've never played with like a full backing track. We've only played with samples that we trigger as if they're another instrument in the ensemble. So
right.
In Erin's piece, she's the one that controls the samples, the casino sounds. And it's almost like another instrument that comes in and blends with the texture of all of our sounds. And in Dennis's piece, Chris and I both play keyboards that are programmed with samples. So, and we have to play them at specific points in the music. So, it's very much like an element of our chamber music.
Yeah, big time.
Like how we end up using this fixed media.
That's great. Super cool. You guys want to check out some of Sam Pluta's piece?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, this is American Tokyo Daydream 4, a 30-minute excerpt here, and then we can talk about it.
Cool.
So awesome. I love all our rips so much. Just saying.
So that's the opening of the piece, and one thing to note is that this piece was recorded before. There is a version, the trio version, that's widely played with accordion. There's also another quartet version that uses piano. That maybe Dan, you've played it before. This is a unique version for Hypercube, and it features accordion and the percussion, which is
I saw that. So I guess the first version was trio with sax, accordion, guitar, right?
Yeah.
And the second version I think was with the piano, and that's the one I played. But then I saw Sam posted something like, "This is the authentic version."
That's right.
It has the accordion and the percussion, which is great.
Yeah.
And I do think that the accordion melds into the sound world really beautifully in this one.
Absolutely. It blends with the soprano sax, I find, really well.
Yeah.
And the sounds on the guitar. As we have similar lines. And you just hear the reeds in the accordion. And it's pretty cool. And your part,
percussion.
It's super powerful.
Yeah, I think one thing that's interesting that kind of what I like about this record is the combination of the sample sounds and the accordion sounds, and how that all gets thematically worked into each of the pieces, and plus actually the electric keyboard too for Aaron's piece in Casino, I think is kind of super cool, kind of exploring the traditional but non-traditional elements of these instruments. And it maybe in a way we got really lucky just having rep that would facilitate all of that as well, really having good pieces written for us, and like lucking out with what we got. you know?
Totally. Yeah. Should we try Philip's piece? You want to check out a little bit of that?
Yeah.
Sure.
So this is Liminal Bridges, excerpt by Philip Schuessler.
Awesome.
Cool.
So fun to play.
We love to rehearse that piece. I don't know what it is about that piece, but we just love to practice it together.
That was like one of our early commission pieces, correct? Like,
yeah.
Like in the early days. Yeah. One of the very first.
Oldest one. Yeah, I think it's the oldest one on the album.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when I was listening to this, I felt like there's a really nice contrast between this piece and some of the other stuff on the disc, which is a little bit more schizophrenic. Like a lot of the rep is very like jump cut ish. You know, you have like an idea and then sort of shifting over and you create like almost like a counterpoint of ideas, because you keep in mind that this thing happened and you're waiting for it to happen again. Where it seems like Philip's piece is a bit like more developmental. It's a bit more
and you hear the transitions.
In terms of the way motives are being managed and stuff like that. But all within this sort of Morse code pointillistic vibe or something, right?
Yeah, I think the Morse code is a good way to like describe it.
Yeah.
It's kind of a clever, gives you like the image right away. you know. Yeah.
So this was like a pretty early commission, you said. How much input are you guys usually giving to composers? Like, for instance, Chris, like in terms of percussion setup, or Jay in terms of like pedal array or something like that. Like,
well, I mean, Philip's piece, I think that might have been like the first piece that was kind of written for all four of us, and then we toured it. It was written, and then we immediately like started playing it quite a bit. But I think that in theory, I think like the pitch development is supposed to work around like the pitch of the cowbell, the tempo bowl, and the gong. And I think Philip, if I remember correctly, had 3 of those instruments in his possession, and he just sort of played around with them and took the pitch spectrum that he liked, and then he worked like the other like pitch sets, if that's the right word for it, around that. Wasn't that like the original idea, like way back? And then so for the recording, and eventually I just ended up using instruments that weren't necessarily those pitches, and not his either. Yeah. So it sort of evolved a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think I remember like when we did the premiere, I used his instruments, and I remember because I think I was setting up after his piece, and I knocked his precious tempo bowl down to the ground, like when we were moving gear around. Yeah, but
Luckily it was okay.
Yeah, but I think after he heard us play it, he's like, I think I remember him telling me personally, it was like, if you want to use your like own gong that you think sounds good, like a tempo bowl that's like a different size that you like, go for it. It doesn't have to be like super specific. So it sort of evolved a little bit from that. But I think his core idea was like those 3 instruments in the pitch spectrum that each of them had. We worked it out from there.
That's always an interesting thing. Like when a composer writes something for not just a specific kind of instrument, but literally a specific iteration of this thing, like a bowl or like a specific pedal that you need to buy, or like, you know what I mean? And then it's sort of, on one hand, there's a cool idea of trying to manifest the original vision, but on the other hand, there's also this nice evolution of like, what is the sort of skeletal version of this piece, or not skeletal, but like a practical version of this piece that can go out into the world. And I think, like you said, in a lot of instances, the composer realizes there's so much more to the piece without this very specific thing than they realized in the first place. And it's sort of like an inspiration point. It's like a jumping off point for for their ideas. So that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely made it our own over time. We played it quite a bit, and it just sort of evolved into this thing. You know, it just like got better and better, and I think we just found ways to like kind of like make it pop. You know.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. It's funny that you think it's like the less like, what is it, jump cut? Was that the word you use to describe some of the other pieces?
Yeah, well, like Sam's piece is very modular.
Yeah.
And register plays a big part of it too, right? So, right.
I see, yeah.
Whereas I feel like there's a longer line going on in Philip's piece. Maybe like the individual parts are sort of percolating around, but the ensemble.
Well, yeah, I guess rhythmically, like Philip's piece is very much. It has like a lot of like modulations and stuff there. Like, you know, learning it was like really tricky, like how to piece it from section to section. Yeah. But I guess as a whole, like from beginning to end, it's like has more of an arc, or it's like a little bit smoother.
I guess that's what I was
to the listener.
That's what I was responding to, but yeah.
And I think the metric modulations that shows how he's thinking about the piece as a whole, because those metric modulations were really important to him, and even though they may sound a little abrasive, they still they add continuity to the piece because it is a metric modulation. It's just not a quick tempo shift. It has something. The sections have something to do with one another, so you hear the progression from one section to the next, I guess, and it helps with the overall continuity.
Yeah. You know, going back to Sam's piece, one thing that I think is really cool about it is that it's inspired by the Japanese animation. And I like whenever we played Sam's piece, or like people have like listened to like our YouTube video of it, I would say 9 out of 10 people say it reminds them of like some sort of animation, like every time. So like he's like really, that jump cut thing that you were mentioning is like, it's like really effective specifically for that piece, for sure.
It reminds me of electronics. I think.
It
reminds me of like how quickly you can change the feel when you're working with electronics, and he writes that into chamber music in this piece.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. You had asked about pedals.
Right.
Yeah. Not so much in Philip's piece, but in just about all the other pieces. There was, you know, conversations early on with the composers, and just like in talking about what pedals I have, and you know, sort of putting together and like effects chain as almost like a preliminary step in the composition. And in some cases, like you know, working with Dennis, for instance, he had like very specific pedals. He even like had a pedal that he wanted me to use. He lent it to me to use. This vocoder, which is how you get those like really altered, garbled vocal sounds. That's all done live with the guitar and like processing my vocals. So it's almost like step one in a lot of cases to kind of put together the effects chain.
Yeah, that's great.
So your pedal board is like something that you would like see in the space shuttle. You know what I mean? It's like he's just sitting. You know how like an organist like plays with their feet? It's like Jay is like the guitarist that's also like a hybrid organist playing. His buttons are like operating all. It's like totally insane.
It's getting carried away, especially like quarantine. I've added two, working on 3 pedals now. Just during quarantine.
Whenever composers ask him, does he have a certain pedal? If he doesn't, he's like, I'm willing to get it though.
Right.
So this is the story.
Yeah. Cool. So
but I think.
Oh, go ahead.
So I was just gonna say, having Jay do those kind of things, I think that really like helps cultivate the sound palette that we're able to have as an ensemble. You know, it really takes it to like another level for sure.
Yeah, it's almost like the third electronic instrument. You know, even pieces that have samples or electronic instruments, the guitar and some of the pedals, like a freeze pedal that'll capture the sound, or these pedals that change the sound of the guitar so much that it becomes like another thing. right? Process guitar.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
It's like kind of evolving in a way, you know?
Yeah.
Beast guitar.
So we the only piece we didn't really check out yet is Nick Deyoe's piece, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a monster piece.
It is. This is
What's-
only 45 seconds of like a 20.
Cool.
18 and a half minutes.
Let's check it out.
Yeah. So this is They Solidify Then Tilt by Nicholas Deyoe.
Cool.
I think something that Nick does really well in this music is he sort of blends the colors into and out of one another. You hear one instrument sort of decrescendo and another instrument immediately crescendo out of it. So you get these waves of sound throughout the piece that are just amazingly beautiful.
Yeah, great hybrid textures.
Yeah.
It's really, really cool. One of the things I love about Nick's music is this sort of patient brutality. You know, it's sort of just like very slow moving, but you feel this sort of like intensity growing. And you guys picked a great sort of climactic moment. What's the guitar tuning there?
It's standard tuning, and it's really interesting the way he wrote, because almost constantly you're using the whammy bar to detune. So you might like play a chord, detune it, like a very specific amount, 50 cents or 25 cents of a pitch. And the interesting thing that happens when you use the whammy bar is like each string goes out a certain amount. So you might be detuning like the lowest note in the chord, but the other notes go like 27 cents out, and then another string goes 50 cents out, and so you end up with this really wild like microtonal.
So he's basically notating for you to focus on the specific pitch change of one of the notes in the chord, and then allowing for the variability of all the others.
Exactly.
Oh, that's cool.
It's all baked into the cake. I mean, and one of the great things about Nick, of course, I think the only composer on this album that's a guitarist.
Right.
And his guitar writing is, I mean, I think I could safely say like some of the most refined electric guitar written music, ever, perhaps. Like, I mean, it's really a level of subtlety and nuance to what he's doing that is pretty unbelievable. And so, I mean, it's a pleasure. I mean, the whole piece is just kind of like a. I mean, the guitar is central, so it's a little bit like a concerto, but where like the whole piece sort of grows out of the guitar part.
Yeah.
You might sort of do one of those sort of you play one of those chords, and then you microtonally sort of drop it, and then the saxophone multiphonic sort of matches one of those pitches, and it just sort of blooms out of it. It's really intense.
Wow.
This is one of those pieces too. I mean, like we said, it's 20 minutes, and it's that excerpt is at a very specific point, and it is definitely not what most of the piece is. Like you said, it builds up to that, Dan. But one thing that is really nice with this record is that we had a lot of time to listen to this track in particular and mix, and some tracks just lend themselves to really interesting questions that come up during mixing, where you really are talking about ratios of blend of color between two instruments in one very specific moment. And it's one of those types of pieces, we've been playing it for a while, and then you go to record it and you realize this whole other world of sort of nuance and level. What, you know, when you're sitting there thinking about mixing and thinking about how to sort of shape things, and it's almost like the question of, well, I guess we should have recorded it first to learn this so that we could perform it at this level, but we also have to play it for a while before being able to record it. So I can imagine wanting to record this piece again at some point. It's just, it has that aspect.
And this instrumentation too, I think, is like really lends itself to getting in the weeds with mixing, you know, and like, and that can just be a really fun thing. I don't, you could just put like a stereo pair out in the hall and record these pieces and it would be cool, but it would be like a totally different album, you know? And my preference always for music like this and instrumentations like this is to hear, because then it becomes another level of the interpretation, you know, the mix, it's embedded in the mix. So
it's kind of that opportunity to like get everything just right, you know, because you're relying on, you know, every time you play it, it's in a different space, and you might have acoustics that are sort of, you know, depending on where you sit, you might hear one thing louder than the other. So to get every instrument just balanced exactly how you want it.
And also in each of these pieces, we usually need about 4 hours of setup time if we do like more than one of these pieces on a concert, just because the subtleties are so great and each piece is so different. We just need a lot of time to get used to the space and be able to do justice to the pieces. So mixing it is ideal, and having it now recorded on an album is the best, because even though we really, really enjoy playing it live, and there's a difference, there's an energy that comes into a live performance that you can't totally recreate on an album, but it's nice to have all those details sort of dialed in now.
Yeah, and they are definitely dialed in beautifully. It sounds great. It's an awesome album. Cool. Well, this was fun, guys. Thanks for making time to have a chat. Again, everybody, Hypercube, Brain on Fire, out today. Go grab it on Bandcamp, and all the proceeds go to these guys. And yeah, congrats. It's awesome.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, good night.
Really appreciate it.
Bye.
All right, guys.
Everybody.
Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Yeah, you too. Bye.